going to slowly getting started. We're going to have our panelists, so please round of applause for our panelists making the time to come to our event at 5 p.m. on a Friday.
I want to thank everyone for being here today, especially to our panelists. Like Arda said, 5 p.m. on a Friday night, that's a big deal, so thank you so much. Also, thank you to Arda for organizing everything. He really did everything for today. The only thing I did, I think, was booking the room. Other than that, he talked to the panelists. Oh, okay, thank you. Is it working? Yes? Yeah, okay. So he did everything. He talked to everyone. He organized the whole, and he conceived the idea. So thank you so much, Arda. We really appreciate you. I am Marcia Bresen Cantillana. I direct Hello World, in case you guys are familiar with it. Is a mentorship program for first year and first time transfer students too. And we also have the Transfer Empowerment Program, which serves transfer students, obviously. And this is a program that we are trying to elevate the student experience, and this panel is part of those two programs combined. Since I direct both, we're kind of like gathering resources from all over the place to make sure to come up with these opportunities for everyone. So again, thank you so much, and I'll pass it on to you, Arda, to get started.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for coming to our event. My name is Arda, lead mentor at Hello World. Marcia talked about the program, senior studying computer science, and without further ado, how the event is going to go is first half an hour, we're going to be getting to know of our panelists. We're going to ask them questions about their story, how they got here, and the decisions that they made after graduating from Berkeley. They're all Berkeley alums. And then the second half of the event is going to be open mic. We're going to be distributing mics around the crowd, and you guys can ask questions that you have in mind to any of our panelists. And without further ado, the question is going to be same for everybody, but I'll just go from the order here. Adham, can you tell us your story, how you came here, and then your story at Berkeley, the companies that you attended, and who is Adham?
Well, nice to meet you all. My name is Adham, or Adam, if you don't know how to say that first one. But I graduated from Berkeley in 2024. So I started in 2020. As you'll hear, the boundaries of 2020 and 2024 are pretty important to contextualize the story. But I joined college during COVID and took a stupid number of classes my first year, which I would not recommend, but definitely set me up in a certain way. About halfway through sophomore year, I started interning, which again, would not recommend super early, but I started my internship journey. I started at Google, and then I interned at Scale that summer, and made the decision to do full-time Scale starting my junior year. So I was at Scale AI, which is like a, I guess, data annotation company, but they do quite a few different things, for about 1 year and 7 months in aggregate. After that, I joined a startup called Harvey, which was basically trying to apply AI to law. And I can speak more to that later, as I'm sure future questions will elucidate, but largely that decision was to try and focus my efforts and focus my energy into something that I thought was the next technology and the best application of that next technology. And so I thought a lot, long and hard about it, and I was like, oh, text in, text out, that's what lawyers do. You know, it wasn't incredibly deep, thorough insights, but ended me up in that startup. I spent about almost 2 years at that startup, and then I left that startup to join DeepMind about 7 or 8 months ago. And at DeepMind, I work on, I don't know if you guys know Gemini, hopefully you do, but I work on Gemini long context. So how do we unlock the next, N million tokens in contextual, in the model's ability to take in context. I also work on video understanding. So how do we get the model, especially because videos consume so many tokens, how do we get these models to see hours and hundreds of hours and entire channels and eventually maybe even all of YouTube's content, for example. So that's what I work on. There's a lot of fun, interesting ideas in the middle, but I want to leave some time for the rest of the panelists to tell us about their story.
By the way, Harvey just got a huge round. The leader of his industry, Harvey, and also scale too. So you can see like a theme with Adham's company of choices just going to skyrocket, getting in early and skyrocketing. But Manahil, can you tell us about more of yourself, your story at Berkeley? You're also still a student here, and yeah, let's hear.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, hello everyone. How are all of you guys doing? Good? Cool, cool. Okay. So hi, I'm Manahil. As Arda mentioned, I was a Berkeley alum and now I'm currently a master's student here at Berkeley working on the MEng program in EECS. I did my undergrad here starting 2023 to 2025 in EECS and data science. I had a very strange journey getting to college. I graduated really early from high school and then did CC and then transferred into Berkeley. So transfer student pipeline, master's student pipeline. I'm currently a 20-year-old master's student. It's very interesting. But beyond that, I've also been currently working at Visa. I did the same thing as you, interned for the first time as sophomore year, probably a questionable decision. But I interned at Visa, interned at NVIDIA, and then continued with Visa for the next 2 years and then started working there. Something that's really important to me is being able to really hands-on build things. And that's kind of the experience that I got, one, at UC Berkeley, which I hope you guys are finding as well, and then also through my master's program where I'm currently doing my capstone under the Sky Computing Lab, where we're working on a translation process from C to Rust, which is very interesting. And then even at Visa, I've had the opportunity to work really closely on specific projects where we have way too much access to production servers that we probably shouldn't. But it's been very fun regardless, and I'm really excited to continue talking to you guys as we continue.
Thank you, Manahil. How about Oliver?
Yeah, is this working?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Oliver. I'm currently a software engineer at Vercel. If you haven't heard of Vercel, we're the creators and maintainers of a popular JavaScript framework called Next.js. We also have a hosting platform and an AI called V0 for generating websites. So I graduated in 2024 in December. So I'm about to hit my 1-year mark at Vercel. About me growing up, how I came to Berkeley. So I first want to ask a question to you all. Who here feels like you grew up without an exposure to computer science or the tech industry as a whole? Hands up if you feel like you didn't have much exposure growing up. Nice. Okay, about a quarter of you. Nice. I'm an international student, so I didn't grow up here. My first time in the US was a week before GBO when I was first starting. And so, yeah, I didn't have any like computer science classes back at my high school. I grew up in Spain, in Barcelona, and so I feel like I didn't have much exposure, and so going here to college felt like a very big movement. But yeah, I grew up in Spain. I went to a lot of hackathons during high school. That was kind of what got me into side projects and working on like JavaScript, different projects, websites, things like that. I eventually joined CalHacks when I was here at Berkeley. That's how me and Arushi met, actually. Yeah, and so during my time here, I did undergraduate research at Bayer. I interned twice, so once at Amazon, then at Apple, and eventually made my way to start full-time at Vercel. I guess we'll talk later about like big tech versus smaller companies, unicorns or startups. I have some opinions on that, so I'll pass it on to Cade, but we can talk about that later on.
Hi, everyone. My name's Cade. I'm a machine learning researcher at Anthropic, and I help train the next generation of Claude models. I started at Berkeley in 2021, but before then, I actually grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. So it was a new experience for me coming and experiencing the Bay Area here in California and also getting exposed to the tech scene. Very, very different from the life in the Midwest. I graduated in 2024 with my bachelor's degree and then stayed on for an extra year to do a fifth-year master's. And I got to intern a few different times and spent a lot of my time at Berkeley trying to figure out what I was interested in. I think it was a very clear trend that I love computer science and I love machine learning, but for me it wasn't immediately clear what the perfect application was. I interned initially at Cohere doing language models back in 2022 before anyone really knew what they were capable of, before we kind of had this strong belief that we currently do. I next spent some time doing drug discovery, doing a lot of applied biology research, using machine learning to design next generation therapeutics. After that, I tested the hypothesis of seeing if machine learning models were already good enough to become autonomous scientists at a nonprofit called Future House, and then now ended up at Anthropic, getting to tackle some very fun problems. It's a pleasure meeting you all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kate. How about Arushi?
I can go next. Is this thing on? All right. Hi, I'm Arashi. I'll do it reverse chronologically, I think. I'm at Anthropic right now, much like Cade. I work on our RL systems, so training the next generation of cloud models that hopefully you all know and love. Before Anthropic, I was at a startup called Adept AI Labs. Is anyone here familiar with this? Yeah, great. That's exactly the response I wanted. Adept no longer exists. It got acquired by Amazon, so I spent a little bit of time at Amazon as well, but Adept was my first job out of college. And the goal of Adept was to train browser agents, models that can automate things on a browser. Before Adept, I was at Berkeley, much like you, as an undergrad. And did I do ML research at Berkeley? No. I was more interested in programming languages and program synthesis, which is algorithms that can write code for itself. That industry got absorbed into language models. That's sort of how I found about language models and ended up working on them. Did I intern in ML? Also no. I mostly did product engineering throughout my internships at Salesforce, as well as at Vanta, again, another company that many of you here may not be familiar with. So I've been at a lot of companies that are a bit on the smaller end, a little more like startups, not all of them very successful. Before Berkeley, I'm also an international student. I grew up in India in a small city called Lucknow. Not that much computer science in Lucknow, and I spent most of my time missing my classes to go do speech and debate and model UN.
That brings a lot of diversity, and also quick hookup. There's a Anthropic club here. If you guys want free, like 4 months of Anthropic, you go to one of the club meetings. They give you free Anthropic for 4 months. But last but not least, we have Maria. Maria, can you tell us who you are and like how did you come here? What was your journey like at Berkeley and the steps that you took after Berkeley, which is very recent?
Yeah, okay, I'll try to answer everything. Also, thank God for these yappers because I'm always late. So you gave me time to settle in. But hi, I'm Maria. I graduated this past May, so I actually just hit like my 3 months not too long ago at work. I'm a software engineer at Google Cloud in the team specifically called GKE. That stands for Google Kubernetes Engine. And my sub-team is like Node Runtime. And I came in 2021, graduated 2025. I was born in Mexico City, but raised in Los Angeles. And so very similar to Rishi, never really had exposure before that. And then coming here to Berkeley, like the tech scene is quite overwhelming. You can literally tell by the billboards. It's all like big data, AI, la la la. And then you go back to LA and it's like, oh, freeway insurance, lawyers, like tacos this, and the smoking one. Like it's very different. So coming here, I was just, I took the very first class, like CS10, the most basic one, just to like say that I tried it. And it's like the colorful blocks, like Snap and Scratch, which like you see middle schoolers do. And it was my hardest class that semester. I'd taken calculus, I was taking physics, I was taking economics, and I was like, why is this like kicking my butt? But with like my roommate who was taking it at the time and other people, like we got through it, and it was like a really rewarding feeling. And so I took 6UNA to continue and thought about like the minor for CS. I was pre-Haas at the time too, so I was taking my business classes and realized CS is too hard to do on my own, so I started looking for communities, and that's when I did the whole club recruiting and only got one acceptance, and that was Codebase. And that became such a strong community for me, supporting me in more ways than I could have imagined. And I'm pretty sure I would not be here without the support of the people in that club. And so I've been trying to give back ever since. But yeah, because I was doing pre-Haas, my first intern, I didn't know what internships were actually when I first got here. So freshman summer, I just went abroad to Portugal with the SCEP program. That was a lot of fun. Then I found out about internships and recruiting. So my first one was actually at an accounting firm, KPMG, one of the big four. Wasn't for me. And so I pivoted into full software. And then my junior summer, I was at MongoDB in New York City. It was a phenomenal experience. Unfortunately, the company wasn't doing great that year, so they only gave 20% of the return offers. And I was a good intern, but I wasn't that good. Like, I was a little crazy. But I think everything happens for a reason. And so I don't think I would have had the same intensity with full-time recruiting if I had known I had a safety net with like the return offer. So fully like skipped all my classes for like 5 weeks, went like straight into recruiting for full-time. Similar story to the club recruiting, only got one acceptance, but hey, you only work one job, right? So got Google, stopped recruiting, and then enjoyed my life after. And then senior spring, I joined the triathlon team, was having a lot of fun with my friends, and yeah, enjoying life now. Sorry, I'm also a yapper, but that's kind of the gist.
Thank you, Maria. And we're going to go back to Arishi now for our second question, which is, we have a lot of students. Everybody is student here. You know, some are senior, some are junior. When we looked at the statistics, some are freshmen. Some don't really know what they enjoy the most. Some don't really know what to do after college. There are a lot of options. It's, you know, a lot of people are scared about the job market. A lot of people are like scared about, I don't know, how they want to spend their lives. How was it for you when you first graduated? And how did you make the decision of going to a big company versus a small company? If you wanted to do master's or not master's, or grad school or not grad school, what was your decision process like when you were a student, when you were a senior and you were graduating?
That's a great question. I am quite an undecisive person. So when I was graduating, I was applying for a master's, and I was applying for grad school, and I was applying for big tech, and I was applying for startups. I was trying my hand at everything and seeing what feels right. Master's didn't work out, and grad school didn't work out, and big tech didn't work out. But one startup, quite like Maria, did end up working out, and that was Adept, and that's where I ended up. But in how I was thinking about joining a big company versus a smaller startup, I was fairly convinced I wanted to join something smaller. My model of the world is that it gets like decreasingly likely that you will take some big risk over time. And the easiest time to do it is right out of college. I had like nobody to support except my cat, who eats a lot, and myself. So I didn't need that much. If things went wrong, it wouldn't be that bad. I was very early career. So it felt like the right time to try something a little more risky. So I ended up at this company called Adept. And even though it didn't work out, I seem to be in a good place now. So it really didn't seem to have gone bad. In fact, I think it worked out for me.
Thank you. How about Kate?
I have a very, very similar story of just trying a lot of things and seeing what sticks. Initially, when I chose to do a master's, I graduated in 3 years, so that answer is kind of amusing. It lowered my tuition a lot being an out-of-state student, and I also got to do more time spent on research and less time spent on classes. But then when I was choosing whether or not to go into industry or pursue academia, that was another moment where I was really uncertain of what to do. I was stressing a lot. I was like talking to a mentor, and he's like, "Why are you stressing so much? You can literally just apply to both things. You don't have to like make a decision until it's game time." So I did that, ended up having some offers to go to grad school, but also ended up having a nice industry opportunity. And the only thing that was driving my decisions is what would lead me to be like the most talented, most intelligent person in the future. You should devalue money a lot if you're starting out in your career early. It scales exponentially with time. And so the only thing that I was looking at is where could I grow the most? And for me, I had a wonderful set of collaborators at Anthropic that I'd worked with previously, and it felt like a natural fit getting to do some really cool research with some people that I've looked up to for many, many years.
Thank you. Some like common themes here, having a lot of like applying to a lot of options, not like sticking to like one thing and then just going for that thing. And if that thing doesn't work out, like, okay, let's like, rather than doing that, a lot of options. But how about Oliver?
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. What Kate said about trying a lot of things. So I tried clubs, CalHacks, internships, research. I found that I'm a very impatient person. For me, research just didn't work out. You know, you'd spend a lot of hours just reading, understanding. And for me, I just like getting my hands dirty and just building. That's kind of like my hackathon ethos. And so I think just early on, finding what you're good at and playing to your strengths really works out. Kind of what Kate was saying about like, don't optimize for money, just what you're good at and what you're passionate about. And I feel like the only way you can find out is just by trying as many things as possible. So that's what I found to work out. Hopefully you still have time in college to just take risks. And yeah, kind of what Rushi was saying too about take risk now, maybe later you might not be able to. So just get out there and start doing everything.
Also, one thing I heard is the first job you take doesn't necessarily define the rest of your future.
Yeah, no, definitely.
From Amit.
Yeah.
But how about Manahel?
Cool, yeah, I agree with everything that was said. I am also a really indecisive person, so I went out of my way to apply to everything I possibly could. I knew that because of my internship and the fact that I was really familiar with the company, I knew I would continue with them. Also because I knew I wanted to do my master's and it was easier to do my master's while at a company that I was familiar with. I honestly applied to a bunch of different master's programs, applied to Berkeley for fun just to see what would happen, and then accidentally got in, and so I just went with it. But also on the fact of taking risks now while like it's a good time for you guys to do so. I know you guys are probably sick and tired of hearing about AI-powered startups on LinkedIn, but honestly, with the SCEP program that exists at Berkeley that you mentioned, and then just entrepreneurship environments here in general, it is an excellent time for you guys to kind of go out of your way and explore problems that you're interested in, and then look at people that are developing solutions for them, and then join them, or be the person that's developing solutions for these problems. Because now is a really good time for you guys to take initiative and then explore pathways that way, and then kind of find your fit from there.
Thank you, Manahel. We have seats in the front. Feel free to just come to the front. And Aham?
Yeah, well, I don't want to sound like a broken record. I fully agree with everything everyone before me has said very strongly. I think in lieu of repeating their much better articulated points, I think I'll give an example of something I went through. I think one thing that really stands out to me about my journey in a way that I didn't really expect it to stand out was one random project I did freshman year. And, you know, funnily enough, I can point to every single job interview I've had and every single time that someone in the workplace like felt like, from my perception, seemed impressed by me in any way, is that single project. It's nothing to do with my resume, it's nothing to do with where I've worked before, has nothing to do with like how well I can speak or how poorly I speak. And it literally boils down to one random project that they saw that I did, and they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. And it was a conversation starter or set the tone in the right way. And it was some, you know, the specifics of the project don't really matter. It was some robotics project that I did. I basically was fascinated with robot dogs, and over COVID had way too much time on my hands. So I decided to get a bunch of servos off of Amazon and build a little robot dog, which, by the way, sucked. Like, it walked for 3 seconds, and those are the 3 seconds of video that are replaying for the last 6 years on my website. So, and like, I think my point here can generalize. Like, I think everyone has this image when they're in college that this world is an incredibly efficient place and everyone is pushing like max gas all the time. And that's really not true. And what people do a lot that they don't realize is they look for structure and paths to follow with the assumption that whoever laid that path out for you had some like put some thought into that path. And you're like, oh, well, if I get this job and grow in this job, that must mean I'm doing things right. I'm here to tell you, your manager, your manager's manager, everyone around you is just as human as you are. And that system is just as flawed as any system that you've experienced. Like when you've come to college, you're like, oh, this is how college works? Like this is how they're checking that we're in class? QR code on a screen? Like maybe that's not the best way. So all to wrap up that point is to say, if you find yourself finding something that gives you a little bit of inspiration, I would say like really tug on that thread. And even if you come out of it with like a failed project, but something that you put on your website, but like all of your other peers may not have even thought to pursue that, that can open up doors for you 6 years down the line. I mean, to this day, my meeting with my manager, like he likes to talk about the dog. I'm like, dude, it's been 6 years. Like, can I have a different personality trait? So yeah, try something different, try something weird. It will most definitely compound and pay off in ways that you probably can't imagine and I didn't imagine. Yeah.
So to recap, the question is like how we chose our path. So how I chose, I'm in big tech. I like to think Big Tech chose me, actually. Like I said, it was the only yes I got. There were like a couple final rounds, but nothing too promising. Like recruiting last year, not to scare y'all, was a little tough. I have a spreadsheet, and it has like over 230 rows. Which I don't think was the best approach. I thought it was like a numbers game, but if you have some connection or some kind of referral or talk to people, I think that's a much better way in, especially being part of communities like Excel Scholars or other fellowships. But to like backtrack a little bit, I knew a master's program wasn't for me at this time. If I were to do a master's, it would probably be an MBA or a law degree 4 to 5 years down the line. And so I knew that wasn't something I wanted. Right after college, startups was really thrilling idea. It was like my first introduction through Excel Scholars, which I joined my senior year, so very late into the game. But I felt like because I started CS like my sophomore year, and I barely had like only one sweet internship when like everyone else had like a bajillion more. I felt like I needed more mentorship and more handholding, so I catered my applications more towards like established companies, and it worked out by some luck, and now I'm at Google. But within Google, there's like a team matching process, and so I did have an option between 2 different teams. One was the Pixel Watch operating system team, and the other one was Kubernetes, the one that I'm in right now. And mind you, these are all very like OS heavy classes, like low level, that type of stuff. I did not take 162. Actually, I did everything in my power to not take 162 while I was here. Because I was like, no, like I'm gonna be a front-end engineer. I'm gonna be like a website girly and it's gonna be great. Both my only options were operating systems, and it was really scary because nothing on my resume like signaled that I was interested or had done anything or wanted to do something like this. But both the managers that I spoke to when I had like my team matching calls talked more to my character than my technical background, and I found that really interesting. But yeah, big tech usually hires generalists, and from there you can like specialize in like different areas. But what they really look for is like a willingness to learn, an initiative, like good attitude, those kinds of characteristics that are kind of hard to build in a person, while these technical skills you can really pick up like over time with like experience. But that was something interesting that stood out to me. And then similar to what was said before, I chose the path with the greater learning opportunity and the biggest outcome given like the space that we're in. So if you're not familiar, Kubernetes on the like official website is like a container orchestration platform. So from my understanding, it's like if you run workloads or apps in a virtual machine, Kubernetes is the platform for it, and what can like organize it, like make sure you have enough resources in terms of like CPU, memory, scheduling your workloads in either serial pair, like that kind of stuff. Where was I going with this? Wait, what was I saying before this? Hold on, I got lost.
You were explaining Kubernetes and what it is, and
Why am I explaining it? Basically, I didn't know anything before until I joined this team. But, oh yes, why I chose it. So because it's the platform for these workloads, the new workloads that are coming into it are AI. They're all AI workloads. They need like bigger compute power. And so with this boom, this team is going to grow along with it. And so that's kind of my reasoning why I chose it. Sorry, I didn't know why I lost my thread.
you saw the growth opportunity within the teams.
Exactly. Yeah.
We have a lot of. Last question I'll ask while you guys are thinking about the questions that you're going to ask. But we have a lot of keywords that are thrown out by our panelists about what made them different or what they did that still like shines in their personality, in their character, or in their resume, still like years later. So in like 1 to 2 sentences, what do you think, Arshi? Well, we'll go again from there. What do you think that made you stand out from all the other applicants that were applying to places? Like it doesn't matter if it's Anthropic or the first startup. When you're talking to the recruiters, what do you think that's your shining point that makes you different from all the other people and makes you end up getting the job?
It's a good question. I think that neither my resume nor my background has anything particularly startling that would make somebody swipe right very quickly. That's mostly luck. Once I have a foot in the door, I think that I spend a disproportional time compared to the average trying to understand what role I'm working towards or what the company is looking for or seems to want to try to do. And that synergy has carried me quite far. As an example, when I was first joining Adept or first recruiting at Adept, one of the things that they were looking for was CUDA kernel engineers. I didn't know what a CUDA kernel was. But in the time between the first recruiting call and the first interview, I picked it up. I spent a lot of time picking it up. And that carried me very, very far during the process. So putting in just like a little bit of extra effort or a little bit of extra mile seems to be what works for me.
Thank you, Archie.
I think my answer is very similar. Just having that dog in you and also building trust with the people you're going to work with. In my case, similar to Adam, actually, I have built most of my career off of a project in my freshman year. Back sitting in the Unit 2 dorm rooms, I was somehow SSHing into this German government-sponsored supercomputer, and I was wielding about 1,000 GPUs, causing a lot of problems, getting yelled at by researchers over there. But all of that led to a really, really good outcome, and the people who I worked with in that project are the ones that I actually worked with at Anthropic. And so they knew my work, they knew how hard I work, and they also had a lot of trust in me and faith, and I think that's what made me stand out to them.
Thank you, Cade. How about Oliver?
I won't say it as good as Cade, but when I was applying to Vercel, we didn't really have a new grad software engineer application. Funnily enough, the only way to apply was to DM the CEO on Twitter. So I got really good at just reaching out. I think getting your foot in the door is really important. A lot of places are more accessible than you might think if you're not just applying to the regular job application, which a couple other 1,000 students or other people are applying to. So I think just take risks, reach out to people. A lot of my internships I found through, DMing someone on LinkedIn or reaching out to a friend. So kind of the personal connection now that we live in the age of AI is really important. So just knowing someone or reaching out, I think is really important. So don't be afraid. Try to stand out. Try to reach out directly. Most people won't even try. So that's my recommendation.
I hope y'all are taking notes on these amazing takes, but how about Manahil?
I'm not sure if this is cliche, but it really comes down to how you communicate. I'll always remember this one interview I had where I was just low-key like yapping and like being super bubbly and crazy. And the interviewer was like, this is the first time I've talked to an engineer who seemed like a person. And I was like, that is very concerning. So honestly, if you just come with the passion and energy and excitement that you have for the role, like fake it till you make it, but come with that like energy and people will pick that up. Like remember, I got my first internship in my sophomore year when I'm still taking like 61's B and A and whatever. So it's like, I didn't have a lot going on my resume, but I was really excited about what the role had going for me and the things that I could do, that they were ready to just take me based on how excited I was and not even like look at my resume hikey. So honestly, focus on your communication, focus on how you present yourself, and you'll go a very long way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult being at the end of this chain because everyone says all the good ones, and then you got to think of like a funky story by yourself. I think everything that they said is as good as gold. I agree with it fully. If I had to add a short, brief part to it, I would say, at the end of the day, the person hiring you is a person, and we have this tendency to think that I'm a person, but then when I'm at work, I'm like this different person, or the professional environment operates differently. But the more you grow, the more you realize it's like not true. It's all about like having connections and being friends and being likable in like a sincere, genuine way. And also, just as like people around you might be able to read you, like your friends might be able to read if you're happy or sad or so on and so forth, so can people at work. And so, for example, the very start of my career was interning at Scale. And I did not know what role I was applying for at Scale when I was applying. A friend referred me, and actually not even a friend, like some random dude in New York who was a friend of a friend referred me, he's now a friend, but I like to think so at least. And long story short, I found out after the fact that that interview was actually for PhD candidates. And if I had known that going in, I would not have performed well on that interview. And I think that's a point to prove that, like maybe I was confident in that interview, and that made them think that I was at that bar, but maybe I wasn't. And so this applies to any interaction you have with any company. Enter with confidence, understand that there are people that will read you just like others, and that is transitive. That'll grow, that'll compound, that'll be useful for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. 2 points for mine. Very similar to what Oliver mentioned. I think it was Oliver. Just try a little bit harder than the rest, and they will notice. One funky story, I guess, that I can think of was for a couple startups that I was applying to. Some roles, there was a section for a cover letter that was optional. For engineering roles, you don't really need that, and a lot of people skip it. But I submitted a poem for every company. Kind of just it was just something quirky, something fun. Honestly, half of them were ChatGPT and me. But it was enough for that to be the first talking point of my first round of interviews. Those were the ones that I got to final round with a couple of those startups. But getting my foot in the door early, and when I talked to other people who had applied to the same role, their timeline was taking a little bit longer than mine had. And so that was something funky. But to the other points, when it came down to manager calls, both for my internship and for my current full-time role, we rarely talked about my technical aspects at all. It was all about finding something in common, me as a person, them as a person. People actually really like talking about themselves. So if you can get them rolling and banter back and forth, they feel really great after that call. And I also think I got especially lucky with my current manager because she has a daughter that graduated from Berkeley 2-3 years ago. And so I low-key think she saw her and me or something. But we talked about her a lot. But yeah, just trying to find some personal connection. And then the last 5 minutes she asked me about some project I did at 61C. And I was like, oh yeah, the circuits one. Treacherous.
All right, thank you to our panelists. Now it's your turn. Let's see the hands, and we're gonna be passing around the mics for you all to ask questions. If I can have Clara and Cash distribute the mics, which are right there. But any questions on the front row so I can hand the mic right now? There you go. Please introduce yourself first, and then you can ask a question. And for our panelists, you can answer whichever question you want.
All right. Hey guys, I'm Swaim Panda. I'm a first-year data science major here, and I kind of had a question for Adam. I really liked your Robo Dog story. I'm kind of trying to build a AI-powered startup myself in my freshman year. It's more focused on ed tech and the building for students, made by students, sort of thing. And I was just asking, what kind of advice would you have for me going into this process of entrepreneurship, Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I'm all out of funky stories. I think the advice I would give to you would be advice I'd give anyone in this room, which is, trying to find something different than what we said before. Maybe I think, sometimes the foot has to step before you feel like you know what you're going to do. Sometimes you kind of have to put yourself in positions where in order to achieve the thing, you have to learn it. I think that goes to Arushi's story earlier. She applied for a CUDA engineer job before she knew what CUDA kernels were, and clearly she's picked it up enough to be a very critical member at Anthropic. So I think I wish you great success in your startup journey, and I think maybe have that in mind.
Thank you. Next questions. Raise your hand and we'll pass out the mics.
Hi, my name is Eric, and I guess my question was, has there been a specific set of courses that you think have been most useful in your day-to-day job, whether that be any specific upper division CS classes or whether that's been the base classes such as CS 61A, B, and C?
Anyone can pick it up.
I'm gonna use some like weird ones. I think 126 is a fairly standard one. I've spent a lot of time thinking about probability, and if anything, the course will in some ways over-prepare you for it. But I think it's a really core skill in terms of reasoning about things from first principles. If you are strong at probability, you can derive statistics, and if you can derive statistics, you can derive strong beliefs about the world. And a really oddball one is 61A. I think Python's becoming a very, very popular language, and I end up writing a lot of JAX day-to-day at my job, and it involves this weird functional programming style. And the course that I hated the most, probably at the start of my CS career, was 61A. I was like, this is not what programming feels like. This is hard, this is obscure, and this is not helping me. Ended up actually being a very, very helpful way to think about programs, so I beg and plead that you stick with it and look for the greater good in it. It's doing something helpful.
A small twist on that. So I, in my day-to-day job, write in TypeScript, and I've never used TypeScript when I was at Berkeley, only in decals. So I used to be a TA for a decal for web development. So I'd say like branch out as well. It's not going to be exactly what you do in industry, what you studied in Berkeley. So there's a lot out there, and it's sometimes more theoretical, sometimes more practical. So in my case, I feel like a decal was maybe the most relevant, which is kind of weird and unexpected.
I do want to add one thing to both their answers, which is that I don't think there exists a class at Berkeley for me that I like day-to-day regret not having taken. And there's many classes I didn't take. I didn't take the programming languages class, the security class, maybe I should have taken that one, the networking class. There's many of these, and I don't think day-to-day I regret any of them. But I'm very happy, and I remember most fondly, and it feels most useful to me, the classes that I really, really found exciting. One of them was EECS 151, which is designing in Verilog, an operating system. It's a bit of a painful class, admittedly, but I remember it very fondly. I really enjoyed it. So kind of balancing out the good recommendations here, the somewhat bad recommendation is to try to take what feels somewhat exciting, and maybe you'll choose wrong, and that's okay.
I was going to add something super quick to that, which is just to add to Rishi's point very briefly. I would be very cautious about letting a class let you decide whether or not you like a topic. So for instance, I took 189, which is like supposedly the canonical like machine learning class at Berkeley. Loved the class. I mean, okay, loved is a strong word. It was a class. I love machine learning, probably weirdly, but that class was not my favorite class. And that's largely because Berkeley is like a very theoretical, foundation-heavy, especially when it comes to courses, we'll present things in a very mathematical and like theory-heavy way. And industry is not like that. So just be cautious about saying like, oh, I didn't like this class, and thus I don't like this this domain.
Yeah, and then one last thing. I wouldn't say there was like a specific class, but there were skills that you pick up in these classes that help a lot. For example, 61B was a tough one, but the process of debugging throughout was something super, super helpful that I use now. Like I use breakpoints, I use my print statements, I like go line by line, I like read logs. Like that kind of like skill I picked up has been something super, super useful. I know I say like, oh, I wish I would have taken 162. You know, in the moment I didn't, and I still don't know if I would, but you like learn on the job while you're there. Like a lot of people haven't experienced things that they're currently working on now, but they don't, as a new grad, the like low-key bar of expectation is super low. So it's really nice because you have a lot of room to grow, a lot of room to learn. You can ask all the dumb questions and no one is gonna judge you. And if they do, they're weird. But yeah, like you pick up on the job, just like picking up those skills, knowing how to work with people. Like I mentioned Codebase, like like I work a lot on open source, and that's on GitHub. So knowing how to like work with people's like the conflictions and the merges and like rebasing, that kind of stuff has also been something super useful that I picked up from like these projects from my club that I use now in my day-to-day. So little tidbits from there.
I guess if everyone's gonna go, I might as well. I agree with everything that was said, but also Berkeley classes teach you how to think, and that's what's really important when you get in industry. I might not be using like what I learned in 161 or 162 or 151 or so on and so forth, but I learned how to suffer and I learned how to debug, and honestly, that takes you a long way. So do your homework, do your projects, learn how to approach these big problems and big code bases, and then that will 100% help you when you get into industry.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Aiden. I'm a freshman studying computer science right now. And in my last couple months here at Berkeley, I've noticed something that I didn't know before, which is the uprise of vibe coding. And I was wondering the relevance of vibe coding and what you guys think, if it's important or not to understand. I've always noticed that before it was always very theoretically focused, and these have been core topics in computer science. But a lot of people are coming to you and being like, oh, maybe we should vibe code a new YC startup, like these type of claims. So I was wondering in industry how important these ideas are.
I will say at my company currently, we're working on this idea called spec-driven code development. It's essentially you have these huge code bases across API, UI, backend, and so on and so forth. And then you use Gen AI platforms to generate the specs for them. So essentially the context or the business logic behind the code. And then you can use these specs in order to provide context for other agents or Gen AI platforms to be able to develop certain features that you get on your Jira board or in your stories and so on and so forth. So they are really, really pushing, at least outside of like the specific like machine learning research related companies, like these companies that aren't exactly AI companies, are really pushing forth for Gen AI code generation based systems. And I feel like it's best to start the like understanding how this like vibe coding, they call it code gen whatever to be fancy, but it is at the end of the day vibe coding. And understanding how it works is a really big deal, because people that have been in the industry for a long time that are just understanding how these tools work are still really hesitant in using them. And sometimes that causes a lot of conflict within teams. So having a good understanding of how things work now will really help you push forward productivity in your team, especially at like what I'm seeing in my company right now.
Likewise to that, real quick, I want to distinguish between vibe coding and code gen. I think a vibe coding is letting the model take the wheel, and then what happens, happens. I vibe code every day. And there are some cases where that is a good thing to do, and in fact, very useful if you want to like make a script or something, whatever, let it happen. If you're starting a startup, definitely like you should vibe code a bunch. But the moment you get to load-bearing things that you need to do, I don't think the models are at a point where you can just let it vibe code. And then some understanding of the system, deep or shallow, is very useful. So there's like some line between where vibe coding ends and code-assisted programming starts. And anytime you let vibe coding cross that line, you're gonna be in a world of pain. But if you keep them on either side, yeah, go for it.
Let's take 2 more quick questions.
Thank you. Thank you guys, first of all, for being here. I'm Valentina. I'm a freshman international student studying comp-sci. My question is mainly for Maria. You said that coming in, you were pre-Haas and you were also CS. When did you actually notice and it clicked on you that you wanted to go into tech?
Yeah, so I actually came in undecided, then picked up pre-Haas, and then did maybe CS, and then did both. So had like my little quarter life crisis a little early. But the moment for me that I knew I wanted to be very technical coming out of college, I wouldn't say it was a particular moment, but it was like a combination of things. It was the experience of being in a community like Codebase where people were like super supportive, and I got to see like their opportunities and like the alumni and how like great their life was, and I was like, this is kind of awesome. And also the satisfaction you get from like figuring out these problems in these technical classes was much greater than like any supply demand graph I could draw in like my business classes and stuff. I think the biggest thing would probably be after my first internship at MongoDB, my first SWE internship, where I paid my own tuition, and because my parents needed, they couldn't help me anymore after my second year. And being able to lift that relief off their shoulders was huge. And kind of seeing that like I can grow myself like technically, be like intellectually stimulated every single day at work, but at the same time like provide a life for not only myself but like the people that I love, to have like a greater quality of life was something that really pushed me, and not at the expense of like my health, because I know like finance bros, they like go insane, they like make up $1 jillion, but they work like 100 hours a week, and that's not like the quality of life that I wanted either. So I thought it was a really good balance of like quality of life, career projection, but also sharing that and paying that forward to like the people that I love the most.
Let's take one more question, and we're gonna have you all. You can still come to the stage and like talk with the panelists for a little. But one last question over there.
Thank you. I had a question for Adham. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Sorry. I specifically with the video understanding, I was wondering if there have been any attempts to do something similar to what Karpathy has described, with just not having a tokenizer and just having a model that takes in raw pixels, and if there have also been any attempts to try applying native sparse attention for understanding very, very long videos.
Yeah, those are two very technical questions. I probably can't speak to the specifics of our approaches at work. At a high level, there are trade-offs to tokenizing versus like raw pixel / byte space. And, you know, those trade-offs are things that you navigate. Yeah, sorry, I can't speak much more to it. Yeah. Oh.
Let's take one more.
Hello, my name's Olivia. Thank you guys so much for all that advice. It's been really useful. I have kind of two questions because one is more specific to Adham and Manahil. I was wondering, at the very beginning, you guys mentioned that like you both interned your sophomore year, and I think you both mentioned it was a questionable decision. So I was wondering first if you could like elaborate on why you thought that was questionable, and just more generally, I was wondering if you guys have either during your time at Berkeley or like now in industry in your jobs like felt in like imposter syndrome, and how would you deal with that?
Thank you. First question, why was it a questionable decision? I mean, this is a tough one to answer. I think there's no like, in life there's not usually like black and white decisions, so there were trade-offs. One huge advantage is you get to start your career earlier, you get a lot more exposure, like tactile feel for what industry actually is. And as a result, you can make much more informed decisions about what you want in the way that Maria and others described. The downsides are it's a lot to handle, and you know, once you start making money and you start like feeling the pace of industry, it can sometimes feel like FOMO to like step back from that, and that can be a huge, you know, whirlwind. So up to you to feel like which side is more important. I've also seen it go poorly as well. And the second part of your question about imposter syndrome, I mean, I think this is like an innate human trait. And I think, in fact, obviously within bounds, but feeling that can sometimes be a good thing. It can be an indication that you're in an environment that's pushing you to grow. Again, in the same way that Arushi described, you know, putting yourself out on a limb and sticking your neck out to apply for a position where you don't have that skill set can force you to build that skill set. So to an extent, it's good so long as it's not like imposing anything on your mental health and you feel like there's a positive avenue for that to grow in, as opposed to like one where you're kind of pushing inwards on yourself.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of everything you said, but also I was very, very new to computer science and the field in general when I started interning. And so sometimes I definitely don't regret interning in my sophomore year, but I do feel like the kind of technical maturity that I could have come in with to make it a more worthwhile experience was not there, which is why sometimes I'd like, maybe it was a kind of problematic decision. But I will say that because of that internship, I really understood what I wanted to continue doing in education going forward, because now I knew that, okay, it's not necessarily the class I take that determines like my role in industry. It's more like how am I learning to build up my skills, and how am I learning to learn in general? That is really important when I go into industry. And so that's definitely something that kind of shapes my perception of there. And then I was always also taking classes at the same time I was interning, which was also a really bad idea. Don't do that. But yes, I was just really overwhelmed, and that was my own fault. But imposter syndrome, absolutely. Every day I feel imposter syndrome. I go anywhere and I feel imposter syndrome. And it's just a matter of understanding that everyone else is also feeling imposter syndrome. So as long as you communicate and ask questions and take on the initiative to learn new things so that you feel a little bit more comfortable in your skin, I feel like that makes things a lot better. Every day I go into work, I'm like, why am I here? How did I even get here? And then I talk to the people around me, and everyone's feeling the same way, and we're all just learning things together, and I think it works out well at the end.
If you're
Can I add one more little thing? Sorry. I just, this part is important for me to say is because I cut my undergraduate journey a little short by working early and stuff. I think one unique advantage of being an undergraduate, being at Berkeley, is the exploration that offers you. And I definitely, when I was an undergrad, felt this visceral sense of I need to move quick. Everyone else around me is moving quick. I need to find a way to articulate my growth and so that everyone can see that, and so that I continue to grow at an exponential rate in the same way that again, everyone around us is. But once you're out of that, right, and you look back on it, you realize that undergraduate, specifically Berkeley, is such a unique experience. And a big part of that uniqueness is how much you can explore. You can take classes that are different. You don't have to take the classes that everyone else is taking. You don't have to have the internship lined up sophomore year or junior year or even senior year. This is a very few subset of years where you'll have an opportunity to try different things out without thinking, to a large extent at least, about making money and about being on a track career. So don't undermine that, because many people later on will compromise 5 years of their career to go do a PhD when they're 45 or something, and just to get a taste of that. And you guys are living in it, so make sure to play to that advantage.
With that, we're gonna wrap up the panel section, but panelists are gonna stick here for 15 more minutes. If you have any questions that were unanswered, Marcia.
I want to do one more question because he had his...
One more question. We cannot decline one more question, please.
Hi, my name's Eddie. I'm a senior. How does the stress compare in your work versus to college? At least for me, in college, it feels very stressful. But at work, sometimes it's enjoyable. So you say stress at work is more enjoyable, or is it still pretty horrible?
I guess I will say it's a different kind of stress altogether. Sure, I don't have exams and classes to attend anymore, but now I have daily meetings and presentations to go to, and that's a whole different stress. And what sucks is I don't get summer break and I don't get winter break anymore, and that's also really sad. But I feel at least once you've gone through Berkeley, I think you can handle anything. I think you've got it.
Yeah, I think Berkeley's harder. I think it is much easier to find the floor at work when you're stressed or having a bad time in the rest of your life, where you can just spend 40 hours or whatever a week working and it's okay. Nobody is gonna yell at you. Nobody's gonna give you a C-. It'll be fine. And then when push comes to shove, when you're working on something that you were really excited about, you will feel stressed, but it's a fun kind of stress. I think it's a little more fun.
Yeah, you're definitely still stressed. You're just not broke anymore. So that makes it better. No, but one thing that's really nice, at least in big tech, is there are clear lines, boundaries with your life outside of work, and so that's defined by you. And if you stick to those, your team respects that, your manager respects that, and you can have a clear boundary for that. So stress, yes, but it ends at 5:30, and you're chilling.
Okay, we'll wrap it up. But our panelists are still gonna stick here for you all to come to the stage and talk with the panelists individually, ask your questions. And this is no ordinary panel. We're actually selecting 5 random students to go to a free dinner that's funded by the school, funded by the program. And you can have that experience. And I'm gonna bring the QR code. But in that meantime, please, a huge round of applause for our panelists that came here on a Friday night. If I was you, I would watch the recording of this event over and over again, take notes on it, have AI take notes on it, and then just learn a lot. Scan this QR code if you wanna be on like the lottery system for the dinner. We're gonna select 5 random students. Now you can come onto the stage, talk with the panelists, mingle for 15 minutes. One more round of applause for our panelists. One last one. Okay, now feel free to come to the stage.